Alright, today we are diving into asset libraries in Blender. It's a feature that many people know about, but one that often causes confusion. So in this video, I will explain everything in a simple, clear and straightforward way with no unnecessary complexity. So let's go! So today's focus is about having a library of objects, materials and other assets that you can reuse across any of your projects. So we are going to use these fun old projects for this video, and I'm going to show you how to set up your asset library and pack all the assets you need in order to reuse them at any time. So if I grab my window here, I can switch to Asset Browser. This is where you will find your library and the assets we are going to manage just after. By default, if you click here, you can see that we already have a lot of things available. You've got hair assets, grease pencil, brushes, physics, geometry nodes, and so on. This is the default Blender library that you can access and use anytime. Now what we are going to do is see how we can change that and use it for our own system. So let's leave that aside for a moment. The first thing you need to do is go to Edit, then Preferences. Under the File path, you will find this window, and here you can define and specify an asset library, because you can actually have several of them. Of course, let's create one for now. When you click on the plus, it will automatically ask you to define a path. This path is really important because this is where you are going to store all the projects and assets you want to reuse across any of your other projects. So let's create this path here. Then I'm going to rename it. I can just double click and call this our project core library. That's the main first step, nothing really fancy, just give a name to your library and define a specific path. Now regarding the import method, this is also really important. By default, we have a pack and we also have append and link. What I highly recommend is to use pack or append and avoid using link. Why? Because append and pack will simply let you bring in and use the asset without maintaining a live connection to the original file. That means any changes you make in your scene won't affect the original mesh stored in your library. So it's kind of a safeguard you want to keep in mind, because otherwise you can end up breaking and modifying your entire library without meaning to. So just stick with pack or append. Of course, pack by default is totally fine. So now let's close the preferences and go into our asset browser. If I use the drop-down menu here, you can see I have all libraries, current files, and then my project core library. All libraries will display everything available locally on your disk. Current file, as the name suggests, will only reflect the assets you've marked as assets inside the current open projects. And then we have our project library. The tricky part when it comes to setting up your library in Blender is understanding how to create a dedicated place with all your assets and then be able to reuse them everywhere and anywhere. Because the process of using an asset and marking it as part of an asset library simply means you want to reuse it across multiple projects. So if I select an object here, let's say I want this object to be part of my library. If I select it and go into the outliner, I can right-click and choose Mark as Assets on the selection. I'm doing it on one object here, but you can also do it on multiple selections at once. Once I mark it as an asset, you will see this little book icon appear, meaning it's now part of my asset library system. But as you can see in my project core library, I don't have anything yet. And that's completely normal because this project is saved elsewhere and not directly acting as the actual library container. However, if I switch to All, you can see that I can actually retrieve the asset I just marked. So the question now is, how do we make this asset properly part of my library with a defined path so that if I open another project later, can I still access it and reuse it? So it's really simple. All you need to do is save this project as a copy inside the same location as your library. Once you do that, it will effectively turn this current project into part of your shared local library that we created earlier. And as you can see, we now have our object here. All the objects you bring in will also keep their deformers, modifiers, and everything attached. The same goes for more complex assets like geometry node or materials. Everything is supported. The only thing you need to make sure of is that the project is saved inside the same folder as your asset library path. And right after that, you can simply right-click and mark them as assets. It's simple as that. Now, if you open a new project, you'll be able to retrieve the library here. The first thing you want to do to refresh and properly update your libraries is to make sure the project is saved. So if I open a new empty project and refresh my asset browser, you can see I'm now using the two assets I marked earlier. From there, I can just drag and drop to retrieve the assets, and then the second one as well. You will notice it has a slightly different shape, and that's expected. As I mentioned, it keeps the modifier stack, but here the origin of the simple deform is referencing an object that doesn't exist in the scene anymore. So I can just remove or fix that afterwards. And the important thing is that I'm not modifying the original asset because they are not linked. I'm just using Append and keep local data instead. And you can further customize your library. So here I can create a category with the plus. Let's say I want to call this meshes. I can right-click and rename it, so now I have my meshes category. From there, I can assign assets to it. I can simply shift-click, select, and place them inside this new collection or category. If I want to get rid of an asset, I can just right-click and clear the asset here. It's the same thing in the outliner. I can also clear it directly from there. Now I can continue building my library. For example, let's say I want the material of his body. I can go into the Material tab, right-click, and mark that material as an asset as well. By default, it will go into the Unsigned section, so I can just create another category called something like Materials, save it, and now I can simply drag and drop this new material into the correct category. And remember, at this point, all you need to do is save this project in the same path as your asset library. Then, if I go into another project and refresh my library, I can see my categories, my meshes, and my materials ready to be reused. I can simply drag and drop them into my mesh. And the last point is that if I want to update the mesh, let's say I'm doing some modification on this object, as soon as I press Ctrl+S, it will update the library. Of course, it's not always very obvious in the thumbnail view, but if you jump into another project like this one and you drag and drop the object again, you can see that I now get the updated version. So you have a connection between the two. It's not linked in the sense that already placed actors or meshes won't be affected, but any UE imported version will reflect the changes. And this is really important to understand because it gives you a good balance between safety and flexibility. You're not breaking existing scenes, but you're still able to evolve your library over time. So overall, it's pretty simple, clean, and straightforward system to use, and it becomes really powerful once you start building a proper asset workflow around it. And that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't hesitate to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and also maybe you can boost the video as well. So don't hesitate to do that, and I see you in 2 weeks for a new one.